Good morning. Want to make sure I keep on schedule, so Victor's out, happy to open the meeting. Yeah. So we have actually a very exciting meeting today. I see we have a small, intimate audience in person, but hundreds over the internet virtually. I guess that's the nature of the meeting these days. But we're very excited about today. So I'm very honored here to welcome the outstanding speakers and guests who have joined us today. Each of them brings a unique perspective and extensive experience on how to achieve healthy longevity. In June this year, the National Academy of Medicine, NAM, released the Global Roadmap for Health Longevity report. And the report provides guidance to societies on how to create more years of good health through strengthening their social infrastructure, physical environment, health systems, and opportunities for education, work, and retirement. The Roadmap Summit, this one here, will explore these enablers by bringing together the most distinguished researchers and institutional leaders across the country and internationally as well. The leaders will speak to what changes are needed to address the challenges for population aging and how to achieve health longevity for all. Before I begin my presentation, I'll be remiss not to thank many members of the planning committee who helped to envision this grand challenge. I think many of them are today, and I'll show you some of the slides, but most notably, the late Tachi Yamada, who in fact sadly passed away about a year ago, and he actually played a really important role in enabling this whole roadmap. And so this meeting is dedicated, and the report is dedicated to Tachi. So if I may, I'd like to show you some slides on the background for this discussion today. This slide shows you the demographic changes globally. If you look at the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the global fertility rate dropping. And the right upper corner shows you a very important graph. In green shows the number of people over age 65, and you can see the trend going upwards. And in blue, the number of people under age 5. It's very obvious to you in 2020, these two lines intersected. And in fact, we now have more people over 65 than under age 5. It's predicted by 2050, 20% of global population will be over 65 and older. And of course, the number of those under 5 is 6% of global population. The bottom line shows you what we call the population pyramid. And you can see very clearly that this pyramid was a true pyramid in 1950 with younger people forming the base of the pyramid and moving upwards. But now by 2020, this pyramid is losing its shape, and certainly by 2050, you can see it's no longer a pyramid. All that simply means that the number of older people are just going to increase as our replacement of younger decreases. This is a slide for US and the population over 65 and older. I think it's obvious to you that in 2020, we're looking at 13%, but by 2050, 22% of the population will be over 65. So that means that, a number of somewhere around 74 million older adults by 2030, that's right around the corner. And of course, we all know that the older adults are more vulnerable to many different issues. And during COVID, 80% of deaths are the older than 65 population. Now, we also know that these demographic changes impact so many things because it fundamentally impacts how families, communities, societies, industry, and economies function. For example, we know that family structures are changing, that certainly there are much fewer multi-generational families, and families living everywhere creates a lot of nuclear families. That relationship clearly is changing. Social infrastructure, social insurance and retirement programs, housing, transportation, public space, And of course, we all know that the older population have more chronic conditions, 2 or 3 times higher than people less than 65, with NCDs or non-communicable chronic disease such as diabetes, hypertension, cancer, osteoporosis, and you name it. So that would put a tremendous strain on healthcare delivery and the financing of healthcare system, not only US, but globally. And finally, as we look at the shrinking population, the workforce size could shrink. And of course, as older people retire, we may be dealing with a major challenge in terms of workforce and its composition as well. So I think the question for today and for all of us and for the global audience is, are we prepared? Well, a number of studies have looked at how prepared are countries globally. The CSI's Global Aging Preparedness Index and the Help Age International Global Age Watch Index. And the conclusion is no surprise to you. Very few countries are prepared to meet both needs and seize opportunity of longer lives, and as assumed by concerns about the older age dependence ratio. I think that is true certainly in our country. Many countries do well in one dimension, but poorly on the other. So I think the issue for all of us is governments have to be forwardly looking and start preparing for this issue, start acting on this issue, and preparing financially, socially, scientifically for longer lifespan. It is truly a global imperative. As we think about how to prepare for this, we need social, scientific, and financial preparedness. And to date, there are a number of studies, such as listed here, led by WHO, and of course our partner in this activity, AARP, our next door neighbor down in the other building. But that's insufficient. So what we decided to do at the NAM is to build on the previous reports by looking clearly using an international commission to recommend effective solutions for promoting health longevity, cross sectors and stakeholder types, and prioritizing the needs for science, technology, innovation to generate a longevity dividend. So 3 years ago, we launched this whole idea of a grand challenge because we believe this is truly a grand challenge that needs to be met by public and private partnerships together. We launched it, in fact, in the Great Hall outside, you can see, and it was highly successful in leading towards what do we need to do in this phase. There are 2 components of Grand Challenge. One is the roadmap, which you hear about today, and the other one is a global competition. In the global competition, we look for innovation. We've been successfully in engaging 12 different sponsors from different countries, from US to Japan, Singapore, Chile, Canada, United Kingdom, European Union, and others, covering 50 countries and territories. And we launched this competition by creating seed dollars for great ideas to improve social, physical, and mental health well-being across the lifespan. 1,500 applications a year, which is supported by 150 such awardees with $50,000 each, and it's been wildly successful. Today, we're going to focus on the roadmap, which is that report that does a comprehensive assessment of challenges and opportunities presented by global aging, and of course, make recommendations for promising solutions. So this is truly an international membership because we recognize this is an international problem. And certainly many audience today are truly international on the virtual Zoom environment. It's co-led by Dr. Linda Fried, who's the Dean of Melbourne School of Public Health at Columbia University, who's here today with us, and Dr. John Wong, who's the co-chair from National University of Singapore. The commission consists of experts spanning a large number of countries, 6 different continents, 8 different countries. I want to highlight the fact that they are not only health experts, but they're economists, social scientists, even scientists and engineers and policymakers to join all of us in looking at this whole issue. What do we need to do to prepare the world for this aging population. It's overseen by International Oversight Board, co-chaired by myself, but also Jan Jenkins, the CEO of ARP, and Kesu Takemi, who is the senior parliament member of Japan, also the UN ambassador to universal health coverage. And you can see also our oversight board consists of very notable individuals that represent all different sectors internationally. So what did we ask this commission to do? They asked to strengthen communities and enrich the lives of older people, to assess the challenges presented by global aging and demonstrate how these challenges can be translated into opportunities. In other words, if people were to live healthier, as they age, they can be productive, they can be mobile, they can live a good living, and they can contribute to society. So the question is how to explore and recommend the approaches to enhancing structures, systems, environments that can support this global aging, and identify and catalyze potential approaches and reforms across the entire spectrum of institutions and systems. And of course, innovative age-related research I talked about, and coordinate with other global initiatives to achieve an integrated and synergistic effort. So the report was released in June, and this grand challenge in health longevity report is called the Roadmap for Health Longevity. And it recommended solutions for policymakers, governmental and non-governmental organizations, and private sector, all together improve health, productivity, quality of life. I'm going to show you one slide on the recommendations you're going to hear a lot more from throughout the day, except to say, one, a lot of this focus on the government, but also the private sector and all of society. It is an all of society issue and must require an all of society approach. But we just say to government, we should establish calls to action to develop and implement data-driven, all of society plans for building organizations and social infrastructures needed to support health span as people age. We need to enable older adults to stay in the workforce if they choose to do so, and reduce ageism and support lifelong learning and voluntary engagement. As you hear, certainly I have done my share with my grandchildren's kindergarten schools to go and volunteer. And I think for me it was exhilarating, and I hope they enjoyed it too. But also develop plans to ensure basic financial security for older adults, because many adults live, in fact, in poverty, and build financial literacy and promote lifelong savings. Design intergenerational communities for healthy living. Too often we send our older relatives to senior homes where they're surrounded by also other older people. But certainly data shows that if you live among the younger people in intergeneration communities, that actually been extremely beneficial to them. Invest in public health to promote population health across life course. Shift healthcare systems to better prioritize prevention, to better prioritize healthy longevity, and promote culturally sensitive, patient-centered, and equitable long-term care. Now, this is a very important message, because while we're discussing this, countries are well aware, or some are, about this issue, but not all are acting. My feeling is there's a huge cost of inaction, because if we don't act urgently and don't act soon, more people are living with poor health, particularly as they get older, suffering and dependence. And that's certainly something that we want to avoid. Also, there's been data show that the GDP, the older population, the silver economy, is a big driver of GDP, and therefore GDP is lower than it would be if you have a healthier population of older people. There'll be a lot more increased financial burden on the government, on individuals and families, and lost the contribution of older people who are more experienced, and in fact, to the well-being of society. And of course, data, as you hear, shows that when you have that intergeneration interaction, everybody benefits. So you lose the benefit opportunity for all ages. So what are we doing about this report? Well, we have decided that this is going to be extremely important that we take this report to as many stakeholders as possible globally. So this represents one of the summits. And the major summit, the first one in London in Singapore, and we thank John Wong for hosting it, was highly successful with the Deputy Prime Minister opening the meeting and with people, leaders, not only from Singapore, from the region, ASEAN region, attending this. This is our second summit. And we thank all of you for being here and for those on virtual audience. We have now gone to the Gerontology Society of America and many other meetings to present this report. But importantly, we want to make sure that the government and society in different regions all hear this. So we have both global and regional summits in the ASEAN region and OECD. We've also produced a thing called Meeting in a Box, which is a paper kit or online kind of system to facilitate communities led this discussion to develop local plans for improving health longevity. And we have publications, op-eds, local regional communications, and of course collaboration with WHO, Help Age International and others to implement this globally. So this is in fact the background for this, and I would say that thank you very much for being here. And of course, we are so pleased that we have an outstanding group of individuals who's here, but particularly the United States Representative, Dr. Bill Foster. As he'll tell you, he's the only PhD in the United States Congress, and we're so glad he's here. He's always been supportive of our initiative in national academies. Certainly when last one I did on genome editing, he was a keynote in helping us set the stage, if you will, on the importance of science and policy. And this is certainly one of them. He's a scientist and businessman representing 11th Congressional District of Illinois. He serves as the chairman of the Science Committee's Investigations and Oversight Subcommittee, which is empowered to investigate and oversee federal scientific research. And Dr. Foster, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for honoring us, and please come us and address the audience. Thank you.
Well, thank you all, Dr. Zhao, for that very warm welcome. It is really an honor to be part of this conversation. And I want to begin by thanking the National Academy of Medicine, all the sponsor organizations, and the international partners for taking the global leadership role in articulating a vision for what healthier aging can and should look like. You know, as a member of Congress, I cannot tell you how reassuring it is when you become aware of a looming problem and you start worrying about it and then discover that, yes, there is a National Academy's report for that, or an ongoing study or commission. And so usually I get through the executive summaries of these, and I can't promise I've read the whole thing. But as the only PhD scientist in Congress, the only PhD physicist, there's an asterisk on that statement. There is a gentleman who's a lifelong farmer from central Indiana, a guy called Jim Baird, who in his youth got a PhD in swine nutrition. All right, and he is a wonderful member of Congress, a Republican, and he's my Republican partner and the co-chair of the R&D caucus with me. But as the only PhD physicist in Congress, you know, one of my roles is to sort of serve as a lightning rod when scientific developments happen that require the attention of Congress or will soon. And so, you know, as Dr. Zhao mentioned, about 10 years ago, you know, I started getting these increasingly urgent requests for meetings from cellular biologists who said, hey, there's been this incredible breakthrough called CRISPR. And, you know, the implications of this are not clear at this point, but it's quite possible that the brave new world is not 100 years from now, but may only be 10. And I think it ended up being, 4 or 5 years after that, that at a National Academies meeting, someone presented what is viewed as a vastly premature effort to edit the human germline. But that's the sort of discussion. And when you look back at the conclusions from almost 10 years ago, they really accurately provided Congress a pretty accurate roadmap of what was going to happen. You saw that, yes, this would be transformative to what you can do with animals in the laboratory, that this would immediately be useful, that there would be a huge worry about inadvertent germline editing, that you didn't want to do willy-nilly experiments, but that with improvements to the then state-of-the-art towards what are called off-target editing, that this is something that could be transformative. And it was just a few weeks ago that I read that, in fact, there is an in vitro injection of, I think they're editing liver cells to eliminate a class of diabetes, which would be transformative if that happens. And this was done responsibly along the guidelines, I think, that were set out by that International National Academy Studies, so that the real benefits to having not only the U.S. Congress, but the whole world have a look around at the bend of the road. And so similarly, it was a few years ago that I started getting these discussions from other scientists and doctors saying that, okay, at this point it looks more likely than not that within a decade there will be a set of relatively low-cost treatments that you can get that will add perhaps a decade to the healthy lifespan of a human. And Congress had better start thinking about this now, so that our social our social support programs for the elderly aren't bankrupted, or not, or maybe they could be tremendously aided. And we have to understand how we will distribute this. So, all of the issues that come up. If you're talking about retirement age, should that depend on whether or not you've taken these health span extension treatments or not? And so that there's a huge bag of snakes. As my dad was a law professor who did a lot of the enforcement language behind the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then spent a lot of time talking about issues like this. He had an expression of a bag of snakes. And there are truly a bag of snakes in all the policy items here. So I want to thank you for allowing the world and the U.S. Congress to have a good peek inside that bag of snakes, so we can start coming up with a plan on how to handle them. And there are many of these issues that come at us that the national academies are really valuable. There's a 3-alarm fire that's been sounded by a lot of the cryptographers because one of these allegedly quantum safe, actually 2 of the 4 allegedly quantum safe algorithms were hacked by non-quantum methods. And that puts potentially all of our communication at risk. And so that, these sort of issues, having the support of the scientific enterprise is just, as I say, invaluable. And the roadmap, this roadmap on healthy lifespan, it really tackles an incredibly ambitious set of issues. And when I looked at your conclusions, they map onto my musings on this subject, quite accurately. And so I want to thank you for that. I was very struck by, I think it was David Brooks wrote an article recently about what a disaster the nuclear family has been for the United States. Because for generations, that has been the ideal, that you have one marriage and that nucleates a whole new family, and that's the only way it can work. And that you shouldn't, and it's somehow become, a thing of shame to be living with your parents. And that's not the way we evolved, and it's not perhaps the best way that society should continue to exist. And so we have to be very open, and we have to be open to the experiences of other countries and other periods in history. And so I think and one of the things I'm most excited about personally as a new grandfather is exactly what Vic talked about, which is the idea that elderly people can be much more involved in the child care. Because we have a huge child care crisis in this country, and we have elderly people who, with the right structures, would be more than happy to help out. And I think it's certainly many of the parts of solutions that can only happen when we get warned early. And so I just want to also thank you for your dedication to actionable and evidence-based recommendations, because this it must have been tough making the progress you made during the global pandemic. And I want to thank everyone for slogging through it, because this problem will not go away as the pandemic clears. So anyway, I just want to thank you. I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more of the specifics and particularly the next steps on this. And I don't know the extent to which you're going to be talking about how we will react to these age extension therapies. This is something that it's not going to be a switch that turns on like CRISPR and just changes everything. These are going to be a number of small things. We already have a number of things that can do a lot towards extending healthy lifespan. And one of the ones I'm most excited about actually are these GLP-1 receptor agonists that you see advertised on TV that look like they're home runs against obesity, which is one of the things that really limits the healthy lifespan in the United States. And so, and a huge driver of healthcare costs, because ultimately what we can do here will depend on money. And if you can avoid wasting huge amounts of taxpayers' money dealing with obesity in ways where there are medically safe interventions that can do a lot to eliminate it, then if we don't take that step, we're missing a real opportunity. So anyway, I just want to thank you again. It is a really great resource, and the fact that it is international when the problem itself is international also warms my heart. So thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Foster, for those, I think, inspiring remarks. And we know that we have a friend in Congress, and this issue, which certainly is so important to all of us and to our nation, hopefully that we will continue discussing with you on this and take some of the recommendations forward. And I also like what you said to me earlier about some of the scientific breakthroughs. Let me follow that up with you in terms of looking at some of your thoughts about how we can make the nations healthier. So thank you very much indeed. So it's my great pleasure to introduce the report co-chairs, Dr. John Wong and Dr. Linda Fried. Dr. Linda Fried is the Dean of Columbia's Melbourne School of Public Health and Director of the Robert Butler Columbia Aging Center. And Dr. John Wong is the Isabel Chair, a Chang Professor of Medical Sciences and Senior Vice President of Health Innovation and Translation at the National University of Singapore. Well, both of them had played a phenomenal leadership role in pulling this together. We started working on this report almost 3 years ago. And of course, you all know that COVID hit in the middle of the last few years. So we had to put the report on pause, the committee, and then reactivate again with their leadership. And so where we are today, we owe a lot to their both leadership, their insight, and their acumen. So with that, why don't I ask Dr. Linda Fried to come up and give her remarks, following that by Dr. John Wong.
Well, good morning. And Dr. Zhao, thank you for the introduction, and Representative Foster for a very important speech. Thank you. It's my honor to represent the Global Commission that produced the Global Roadmap for Healthy Longevity, which we will be discussing today. And I'd like to start with an observation, assuming I can advance the slide. Yeah. Oh, okay. Which is, first to start with, I think, a very important and exciting frame, which is that we are talking about longevity that actually is the success of human societal investment over the last century. That we, because of our investments in human capital, in the conditions that benefit human development and survival, we have, in fact, created longer lives. And now, as has already been laid out, we have the next generation of challenge ahead of us, which is to decide whether, and I mean the active word of decide, whether these long lives will be lived with or without health, and what the consequences of that choice would be. The conclusion of the Global Commission is that the evidence supports the potential for us to extend health span, the length of our healthy lives, so that they approximate our longer lifespan. I think that is an exceptionally exciting thing to be able to say to you today, that we can set our sights on that the science of the last half century enables us to make that statement. And then the question is, what would it take to do that? And what would that unleash, and to what degree what it unleashed would be opportunities for societal as well as individual thriving. So I'll start first by the definition that the Global Commission offers for what we're talking about when we talk about an increased health span or we talk about healthy longevity. We defined it as the state in which years in good health approach the biological lifespan with physical, cognitive, and social functioning enabling well-being across populations. And the evidence is quite strong at this point that investments in health promotion across the life course can build the opportunity for all people to have a health span that does extend and approximate the longer lengths of their lives. That it is possible to preserve health for all into older ages with a high return on investment, as we'll be talking about, and solving the high costs, as Dr. Zhao said, of inaction. Now, one of the questions perhaps in people's minds is there a value to having healthy longer lives? And in fact, it is quite clear to the Commission that science offers a wider lens than perhaps our public narratives include to be able to answer that. One answer is that for us as individuals, the opportunity to live out the full human life course across all the stages of a human life with health is of value to people. And of course, going to statements before from Dr. Zhao, to have families of multiple generations to be able to enjoy each other and provide intergenerational supports over their longer lives is of huge value. Less well recognized, perhaps, is that science is describing that as we age, there is the opportunity and high likelihood of developing a wide range of assets that are associated with aging and that the world really has never seen before at the kind of scale that we are creating when a fifth of the population is over 65. Certainly as people age, they develop expertise and experience, both in terms of objective knowledge and in terms of life experience. These do not disappear with aging. As people age, they develop higher order cognitive skills with the ability to solve complex problems in a lifetime of experience in doing so. As people age, their socio-emotional skills mature. There's more emotional stability and more emotional well-being. And people prioritize deeply human needs of meaning and connection and giving back to others that in ways that are not seen when one is younger. In fact, people, as people get older, they have capabilities in conflict resolution that are not seen in younger people, and a deep desire to look at what is coming at us from the long term and solve it for the public good with a sense of urgency. These kinds of capabilities add up to the idea of wisdom with age. None of us are guaranteed that, but the likelihood of being able to access it improves because of these capabilities. And finally, as people get older, their life stage goals change, perhaps because, as Laura Carstensen has shown, the timeline of impending increased risk for mortality changes one's priorities, and people enact pro-social goals as they get older of wanting to leave their families, their communities, their society better than they found it. All of this adds up to what we believe could create great optimism for the young about what it means to be able to have a longer life, particularly a longer life with health and well-being. And it adds up to a potential societal import of real opportunity in terms of how we benefit from, enable, even harness the assets of older age in ways that older people want to be engaged with and in which society could gain. And of course, when you have a population that's a fifth of a country's population with these kinds of assets, it is still unknown what the kind of benefit is that could result. I'll also say that the evidence is that many of our policy and intrinsic assumptions about what older age means have been debunked as myths. Aging, it is clear, is not just about personal needs. Older adults, as I just said, bring assets of immense, real, and potential value. It's clear that generations do not need to be in competition, and healthy longevity could benefit both the health and well-being of young people and strengthen all of society. It's clear that intergenerational teams, whether in the workforce or in the community, are more productive than single-generation teams and actually more innovative. And it's clear that older people are committed to the future for the well-being of their children and grandchildren and future generations broadly. In fact, if we recognize and construct the opportunities of longer lives, we could enable the goals of older people to pay it forward. And finally, consistently, designing for a life that is longer, designing for older adults turns out often to be a better design for all ages with a high return on investment. So the Commission, taking all of this evidence into account, considered how to set goals for us that are realistic but really build out for the opportunities while also meeting needs. And we elected to create what is called a future-back vision, a vision of what a transformed society that uses this evidence might look like in the year 2050, a mere 27 years from now. A vision that describes a society that, having successfully utilized the evidence of what's possible and what's needed, will have created healthy longevity and delivered its impact for a positive future for all ages. What would that Vision 2050 look like once realized? Well, for individuals, it would mean that all people are enabled to have long lives with health and function into the oldest ages, and have the personal agency to participate in the creation of their own health. It would mean that aging-associated needs, which are real, are well met for long lives of dignity. It would mean that healthy older people have full opportunity to engage in meaningful and productive activities that meet their goals, whether it's working for pay or bringing their social capital to contribute to a better future. And in this scenario, the creation of these opportunities would also mean that loneliness and isolation would not be the default experiences of aging that many now experience them to be. It would also mean that young adults have greater intergenerational support and, contrary to myth, more job opportunities, because the evidence is strong that when more older people are working, the economy is stronger and more jobs are created for the young. And it would mean that adults of all ages are recognized as bringing value to the table with synergy across their capabilities. So what would this possible future of culturally appropriate, thriving societies of long lives look like? A lifetime of good health, of learning and growth, of enhanced human, financial, and social capital, of people across the life course with their basic protections for thriving met, diverse and intergenerational relationships, productive and rewarding work, and the ability to contribute to one's community and society through volunteering, and societal roles that enable people of all ages to live with meaning, purpose, and impact to meet societal needs. For societies, this could add up to not just opportunity, but huge value and the potential for thriving across all ages. A long health span and decreased health disparities are clearly assets for nations and societies. The ability for older people to bring the assets they accrue across their life to benefit society is an asset, whether it's through their contributions through work or in non-monetary roles like volunteering and caregiving. The return on investment for society would be tremendous. An enlarged workforce of more people working longer as they need and want to, a stronger economy, increased ability of a society to invest in human capital and public goods, and young people more successful. Overall, the message from the Commission is that when older people thrive, all people and economies thrive, and investing across the life course in making that possible would be a win for all ages. Now, it would be very reasonable to say that this sounds very altruistic, but not feasible. But in fact, the report of the Global Commission of a Global Roadmap for Healthy Longevity sets as its goal for you to say that this is accomplishable with a very high return on investment. And as Dr. Zhao said, the costs of inaction are very high. So I'll end with a few thoughts. First, the implications of the report are that by increasing healthy longevity, societies can minimize individual and societal burdens of long lives with illness and benefit from the continued engagement of adults in older age in society, whether it's working or contributing in non-paid roles like volunteering. And we could do the planning and the policies and the practices that could unleash the potential of older people to, if healthy, to contribute to the well-being of society in ways that they value. The result could be a longevity dividend for individuals and society at large. Dr. Wang will speak to this virtuous cycle that the Commission identified, that for us to accomplish healthy longevity in the top yellow circle, a combination of investing appropriately in creating a healthy population across the life course and into the oldest stages, and the creating and realizing the opportunities of older people being able to remain engaged in society because healthy. This is an all-of-society proposition with the enablers of 4 key sectors in the bottom right in the light blue circle that will require real transformation in order to get there across all sectors. And Dr. Wang in a minute will be addressing that. But the bottom line is that an all-of-society transformation to a society for longer lives is both possible and the returns would be very high. It will require all sectors to implement and align a shared vision of what we are seeking to accomplish healthy longevity, system changes across society, some of which will be incremental and some of which will need to be transformational for a world for longer lives that we never lived before. Vision 2050, which the Global Commission offers to you, is one in which we can transform to thriving societies of longer lives, recognizing the tremendous opportunities that are possible, which are contrary to historic assumptions, and that all ages will benefit and all of society could benefit, and we would realize for all ages a longevity dividend. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, and I'd like to thank Dr. Victor Zhao and the National Academy of Medicine for convening this global commission on an issue so critical to the whole world. I think Dr. Zhao showed that in 6 years' time, the United States is going to become a super-aged society. But it took the US about 72 years to move from an aging society to an aged society. The speed of transformation in my part of the world, Asia is moving, many countries in Asia are moving from aging to aged in 20 years, in 1/3 the time of the United States, and thus the urgency of this globally. So I'd like to thank Representative Dr. Foster for joining us this morning, because this is truly a global issue. And why is it so challenging? It's because health, and I'm using the WHO definition of health, which really encompasses physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease. But poor health and health inequalities are outcomes of a multitude of interdependent elements within a connected whole. And these outcomes affect each other in sometimes subtle ways, and changes in one can reverberate throughout the entire system. So we need a broad spectrum of methods to design, implement, and evaluate interventions. And this is a diagram from the World Economic Forum to show just how complex health is and how it is an outcome of a complex system. Just to take obesity as an example, these are just some of the factors affecting obesity. The design of the environment, not just the quality and type of food, but socioeconomic status, employment status, public transportation and physical activity, the climate itself, the degree of air pollution, and whether it's even safe to go outside to exercise. And this was a slide shared by Sir Michael Marmot from University College London at the first workshop organized by the Commission, where he showed that in the United Kingdom, if you wanted to eat according to the United Kingdom Healthy Living Guidelines, and if you happen to be in the bottom decile of the socioeconomic class in the United Kingdom, that you would have to spend 74% of the monthly income to eat according to UK Living Well guidelines. In contrast, if you were in the top decile of the socioeconomic strata, you spend approximately 6 to 7%. So one can see that even if one wanted to live a healthy lifestyle, it's very challenging because of social determinants of health. And then there's this whole issue of dependencies. If one of the parents or both parents are unemployed, poorly educated, socially marginalized, there's a very high chance that they are going to have poor physical and mental health. And the impact on their children is substantial. The children are more likely to face disproportionate levels of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, mental and physical health issues. And so another generation is challenged to achieve their full potential, with negative consequences on education, employment, and healthy life years. So the Commission identified 4 domains that we need to address, and we provide the evidence why these 4 domains are so important. The first is the domain of the potential longevity dividend if we invest in work and retirement, volunteering, and true lifelong education and retraining. The second domain, the importance of the social infrastructure. Dr. Fried outlined the pro-social strengths of older people, but addressing ageism and age discrimination, social inclusion, financial security in retirement, and very importantly, in the 21st century, digital literacy. Without digital literacy, it's almost very difficult to access online learning, delivery of food, even access to transportation and education. The importance of investing in the physical environment, housing, public spaces and infrastructure, safety transportation, again, digital technologies, and now climate change and environmental hazards. And the fourth big domain, reconfiguring and redesigning health systems, from public health to chronic conditions, how we deliver care, both acute, chronic disease as well as long-term care, the healthcare workforce itself, and the great promises of geoscience, technology, and big data. And just to use one example, just if we look at work and retirement, these are all the interactions that work and retirement have with the rest of the ecosystem, again demonstrating the importance of complex systems. So healthy longevity, or the lack thereof, is the result of the interactions of complex systems. We need to activate, transform, and coordinate multiple systems within society. And innovation in any one sector by itself will not lead to transformation of the whole of society to achieve healthy longevity. And that is why it's so important for all the disciplines to work in a coordinated, integrated fashion with a common goal. And so healthy longevity is really about all aspects of life and requires an all of society and life course approach involving transformations in every sector of a nation. These are the relevant actors, and as you can see, it really requires governments, non-governmental and multilateral organizations, the private sector, the academic community, local and community organizations, working very closely with individuals, families, and communities. Dr. Fried shared this critical slide, which we think is probably the most important diagram from the report, that if we invest in the enablers, work, social infrastructure, the physical environment, and redesigning of the health systems, and if we can tackle the disruptors, ageism, disease, poverty, social determinants of health, mitigate the effects of pollution and climate change, address social and family conflict, and address inequity, we can lead to societies of healthy longevity with individual and societal health and well-being. And through them and productive engagement, we can harness both human capital, social capital, and ultimately economic capital. And this will serve as the virtuous cycle. But look at the center of this virtuous cycle. The center is a strong social compact. Every nation needs to address its social compact with social cohesion and equity as key driving elements of this virtuous cycle. So the Commission outlined 8 goals for 2050, and I tell people 2050 is 28 years' time. It's not that long away. 28 years ago was when I saw Phantom of the Opera, and I can still remember it very clearly. So the 8 goals, number 1, really investing in economic and the social benefits generated by people living, working, volunteering, and engaging longer. Secondly, investing in social infrastructure, institutions, and business systems that enable safe and meaningful work and other community engagement at every stage of life. Third, education and training opportunities that promote participation in lifelong learning and growth. Number 4, social cohesion, augmented by intergenerational connections and the creation of opportunities for purposeful engagement by older people at the family, community, and societal levels. Number 5, social protections and financial security that mitigate the effects of financial vulnerability at older ages. Number 6, investing in the physical environment and infrastructure to support function and engagement of people at older ages. Number 7, really integrating our public health, social service, and changing healthcare from disease centricity to person centricity, and investing in redesign of long-term care systems designed to extend years of good health and support the diverse needs of older people. And lastly, looking at quality long-term care systems to ensure that people receive the care that they require in the setting that they desire for a life of meaning and dignity. So how do we begin? The evidence that the Commission has generated suggests that if we do invest in the complex systems initiating levers towards Vision 2050, which Dr. Fried so eloquently pointed out, and if we look at the recommendations that the Commission is proposing for the next 5 years, and in which the rest of the day we'll have several panels discussing these 4 domains, that we will be on the path to achieving the dividend of this incredible miracle of the 21st century, that we've actually been able to extend lifespan around the world. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, John and Linda, for taking us through a quick tour of the report, setting the stage for the rest of the day. Certainly, I think some of the messages resonate very well with all of us. And as they say, time to act.